I've got an emergency alert for everybody listening. Right now, there is an existential threat to not only the United States of America, but the entire globe. I'm about to reveal to you one country that is literally funneling billions of dollars in order to, push their propaganda and using mainstream media to do it. And I'm going to call out some mainstream media names specifically in the United States, and I'm going to use backing, proof, and evidence that these particular media outlets are, in bed with this particular country. Not just that, but this country is using not only propaganda and media, but they're using threat, intimidation tactics, as well as threats of cyber attack. This is absolutely huge, especially because the risk of me putting this out there puts a target on my back as a journalist by this particular country. So before I get into it, let's just take a quick break. A famous movie villain once said, "Introduce a little anarchy, upset the established order, and everything becomes chaos." Well, truer words have rarely been spoken. History has demonstrated this repeatedly. I'm talking about market crashes, terrorist activity, or even the multiple power grid failures that we've had over the years. The fact of the matter is, crises happen without warning. When it's breaking news, it's already too late to prepare, and your family becomes in a panicked scramble. Well, in order to prevent that chaos from happening to you or your loved one, may I encourage you to please make sure you have food storage on hand. Now, I personally use preparewithlisa.com. They have some of the most amazing, best tasting, nutritious food on the market. And right now, it's 40% off. And even better, it ships right to your doorstep, guaranteed 2-day delivery. This is an awesome deal. I personally use the 4-week food supply and have that on hand, multiple of them actually, but you can get either a 2-week food supply or the 4-week food supply at 40% off. But it includes breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Some of the items in there I'll show you is creamy chicken flavored rice. I've actually had that, and that's amazing. As well as home-style potato soup, and then some breakfast items, pancakes, and oatmeal galore. Needless to say, this is a great item to have on hand to prepare you and your loved ones in the event of some kind of catastrophe. Don't be a victim to catastrophe. Be ahead of the catastrophe and prepare at preparewithlisa.com. Again, that's preparewithlisa.com. And don't forget, they have the 2-day expedited delivery going on now. All right, back to the broadcast. So just what is this threat? It's China. China's Communist Party, CCP, and they've got their grubby little hands in media networks, mainstream media networks, all over the globe. Now, I'm going to prove it to you so you don't have to take my word for it. Check out this report here. This is actually Freedom House, and it's a report that's brand new. They put it out January 2020, and it's called Beijing's Global Megaphone, the expansion of China's Communist Party, CCP media influence since 2017. And this was done by Sarah Cook, Senior Research Analyst for China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. Now, this is absolutely critical, and I'm going to ask you again to share it with everybody you know. But in this report, you're going to find out that media organizations are being paid by China to keep their mouths shut. Yeah, I'm talking about New York Times, Washington Post, and others. They're all named in this report. This is why I say don't have anything or dealings with mainstream media. Don't read it, because a lot of it is propaganda. But let me start here with the first channel, and I'm going to try a first chapter, but I'm going to try to go through this as quick as I can. So the chapter 1 here, the goals of CCP, China's Communist Party, global media influence, and it starts. The CCP's global media influence campaigns target both overseas Chinese and non-Chinese audiences. That means here in the United States, they have traditionally been designated to accomplish 3 primary aims. What are those aims? Number 1, to promote a positive view of China and the Communist Party's authoritative regime. Number 2, to encourage foreign investment in China. Invest in China, and openness to Chinese investment and strategic engagement abroad. And third, to marginalize, demonize, or entirely suppress anti-CCP voices, political commentary, and expose that present the Chinese government and its leaders in a negative light. So basically, you can't put the Chinese government in a negative light. You can't talk bad against the Communist Party there in China, or the Communist Party, period. right? This is the kind of stuff that they're using not only in China, but all across the globe. Now, here's an actual image, and this is on the 4th page of the report, China's Toolbox for Global Media Influence. Now, this is only a 32 or 39-ish page report. I encourage you to read it on your own because there's so much in it. But it took me all of less than an hour. But it says propaganda, censorship, and content delivery. Under the propaganda, you see expanding Chinese state media. That's what they've done, right? They've spent billions of dollars, cultivating foreign outlets to produce pro-Beijing content. This is happening, as you're going to see, on Facebook, on Instagram, on social media platforms here in the US, right? As well as mainstream media, and purchase foreign media. They've done that here in the US too and all across the globe, conducting disinformation campaigns, censorship, intimidating critical journalists and outlets. One of the things that they use, incentivizing self-censorship and deploying cyber attacks, physical assault, and verbal abuse. Anyone who speaks against China, these are the tactics that they use. All of these, right? Content delivery, becoming a leading force in digital television, expanding Chinese social media platforms, that would be your TikTok, your WeChat, right? And gaining worldwide mobile market share. So that kind of gives you an overview. Let's head into chapter 2 here. Propaganda, how the CCP promotes its favored content and narratives abroad. The CCP employs a variety of methods to reach global audiences with approved content. These include building up the overseas capacity and presence of official state media, insinuating official views into foreign mainstream media, cultivating foreign outlets that can produce their own favorable content, acquiring or establishing new outlets, and conducting disinformation campaigns on global social media platforms there. And what is some of this media platforms or social media platforms that they're using? Well, this is shown on page 7. You see Chinese state media misleading taglines. It says China state media outlets are active on a global social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, which are actually blocked in China, but yet China uses these platforms to push their propaganda. They have occurred large followings thanks in part to promotional ads that Facebook allows them to promote and deceptive descriptions that obscure their state-run origins. Right now, Facebook does not tell you if these are state-run or tells you who is funding these ads, when in reality, the ads that are being pushed on all these social media sites are funded and bought and paid for by one other than state-run media there in China, pushing a communist message, pushing a pro-Chinese message to make China look good, regardless of the fact that they are literally rounding up Uyghur Muslims, Christians, and Falun Gongs and putting them into re-education camps. But they want to continue to push their media. And as you can see on this page also, they are insinuating official views into foreign mainstream media. And what is some of that foreign mainstream media? Well, here's the part that literally needs to go viral. And this is on page 8 of the report, so if you're following along. But here's what it says. While this type of media outreach is a common tool of public diplomacy, Chinese state media have also used more usual and arguably more opaque methods to exploit foreign media outlets. Chinese officials and state media documents have referred to this practice as borrowing the boat to reach the sea. One of the most prominent examples is the periodic inclusion of a paid news-like advertising supplement from China Daily called China Watch in the print editions of papers like Washington Post, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Los Angeles Times. Similar advertorial inserts have appeared in major newspapers in other parts of the world, including Spain, UK, Australia, Argentina, Peru, and India. In case of the Washington Post and some other publications, China Watch also appears as an online feature, further blurring the lines between China state media content and the host outlet's own reporting. In other words, Washington Post, LA Times, Wall Street Journal, and the New York Times are all blurring the lines and using money from China to keep their mouth shut on what's happening in China. All these called out by name in this report. Basically, China sends them money and they do the bidding of the Chinese government, you see. And this is admitted right here in this Freedom House report. How huge is that? To know that these mainstream media outlets are in bed. Well, okay, we won't push that content. We'll keep our mouths shut on that. This is why you get communist sentiment from these particular mainstream media news outlets, because they're paid to push it, you see. And that's what I have a problem with. Let me give you another example in here that's across the page. The 2018 Financial Times investigation found that CCTV provides also free video footage and television scripts to 1,700 smaller foreign news organizations and media groups. In recent years, arrangements of this kind have led to the airing of Chinese-produced documentaries and other news or entertainment program on local stations. In other words, not only are they paying them, but they're sending free content to them. All kind of stuff on China, only the good part, right? So as a result, pro-Chinese documentaries are getting created and made. You see, because China's already in bed with Hollywood. Hey, by the way, Brian Stelter is going to hook up with Hollywood and put out this whole fake news report. Well, I think we really know that Brian Stelter, your CNN people, are really the fake news. After all, we have proof that some of these are being funded by China. Let's go to the next page here on number 9, cultivating foreign media that can produce their own favorable content. Here's what else they do. Chinese diplomats and other officials have gone to great lengths to develop friendly relations with even private media owners and reporters, encouraging them to create their own content that promotes key narratives favored by Beijing. What does that mean? That means that they're also getting basically not just your mainstream media reporters, but there's propaganda pieces that they cultivate outside of that. So pay attention to who you listen to. Do they ever speak against China? You know, and that's something else I think we have to pay attention to. So moving on a little bit in the report to chapter 3, I'm going to skip over some there. Again, lots of great stuff. Censorship is also another tool that the CCP is using. Ergo, why they're being given more control over the internet. I've done reports on that. How the CCP suppresses critical news coverage abroad. Okay, not only are they sending money, but they're suppressing content. Here's what it says. Since coming to power in 1949, the CCP has constructed a multi-layered system for censoring unwanted news and stifling dissent with China. Over the past 3 decades, aspects of this apparatus have been adapted to impose some censorship on media outlets based outside the country. As with its propaganda efforts, the regime's transnational censorship operation uses a combination of overt and covert methods. The CCP's effort in this regard can be grouped into 4 categories. So here's the 4 ways, basically, in which they censor content. The first one here, direct action by Chinese government representatives. Here's what they do. Chinese officials have begun to use economic leverage to silence negative reporting or commentary in local language media with greater frequency. It goes on, outside of China, diplomats press senior editors and media executives to alter critical coverage or attempt to intimidate journalists via phone calls and public shaming. In recent years, China envoys appear to have become more aggressive in their efforts, with notable incidents involving Chinese language media in the United States of America, as well as mainstream media in countries such as Russia, and the list is there. A second way in which they do this is carrots and sticks to encourage self-censorship by media owners. And I'm going to hone in on this part. The affected owners and executives typically enforce self-censorship within their outlets by killing stories, disseminating independent media journalists, or ending contracts for critical columnists. Some of them are communists. In 2013, here's an example. Bloomberg executives in the U.S. halted reporting on an investigation into a wealthy Chinese businessman and ties to top officials following backlash from the Chinese government over a story about Xi Jinping's family wealth. What did Bloomberg do? They didn't air the story because China told them not to, and they received pressure. Well, now, Bloomberg, I thought you were about the American people, but apparently not. Another thing that they do is they apply indirect pressure via proxies. And here's what it says. The CCP is apt at using proxies, including advertisers, satellite firms, technology companies, foreign governments, and international organizations to prevent or punish the publication of unfavorable content. They don't like your content, you're going to be punished, right? And the fourth way, cyber attacks, physical assault, and online verbal abuse. Commentators, journalists, and media outlets responsible for critical coverage of CCP routinely face cyber attacks, physical assaults that sever the party's aims. Even if there is not always proof that they were ordered by Beijing, denial of service and phishing attacks often target offshore Chinese media and exile communities. But they have also penetrated the computer systems of major international news outlets in the United States, like the Wall Street Journal, which is why I think some of these organizations have caved to pressure, when in reality, it needs to be all about us here in the United States of America and what's best for us, but it's not. Now, other things that they talk about in the rest of this report, I don't really want to hone in on too much more, but they talk about the ties of WeChat and TikTok. This can all be found on page 18 and 19 and throughout the end of the report. So I'm just going to kind of summarize. But basically, China is using those two, WeChat, TikTok, to basically influence and push Chinese propaganda on our kids. And not just here, because those are programs that are used all over the globe. And so when our children are engaging in these, they're getting fed propaganda, in roundabout ways by communist China. And these are things that we need to be aware of. But the bottom line, the Communist Party there in China is engaging in a massive campaign to influence media, not only their media, but media around the world. And they're spending billions. They're using propaganda. They're paying media outlets. They're threatening media outlets with silence, threatening repercussions, threatening their economic status, right? We've got all these threats, and some have even had particular DDoS attacks or hack attacks against their agencies. This is why China, the CCP, is a threat to the globe. And that's why I've issued an emergency warning. How can we stay silent on something like this? This is affecting our kids. This is affecting our homeland. And this is why you're getting fed fake news coverage by mainstream media. One of the reasons, right? Think of if they're accepting money from China, basically, right? Think of the repercussions of who else they're accepting money from, so to speak, in roundabout ways. But it's not just that. Who else is threatening and intimidating our mainstream media to shut up? And why is the mainstream media caving in to such pressure? You see, these are questions I think that need to be addressed, and why I encourage everyone to sub channels like mine and get on alternative media. Go to Restricted Republic. That's why we have it. Anyhow, I'd love to get your thoughts, comments, and concerns. Please leave them below. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.